Like Koalas in a Cyclone by Colin Dixon. Grafton 2460. Narrated by David Tredinnick. Home for me was the barren, bulldozed plains of 1960s Western Sydney. From our suburb, a train to Sydney took over 2 hours. In summer, during peak hour, the packed red rattlers travelled with the doors wide open. Anyone forced to stand near the door clung to the brass poles and handrails like koalas in a cyclone. It was a place where all eucalyptus trees, defunct dairies and abandoned vegetable farms were flattened and rapidly replaced with fibro boxes. Houses for the working class that were built quickly, close together, with little regard for services or recreation. Our house was a 3-bedroom housing commission building built by the government and purchased by our parents with a 60-year low-interest loan. We lived on the edge of this newly created urban sprawl, 2 miles from the shopping centre and train station. Our playgrounds were our backyards, the street, and the scrubland surrounding our house on 2 sides. The school was a mile away. The nearest park with play equipment was almost half that distance. We were fringe dwellers in a suburb that was a fringe dweller of Greater Sydney. I grew up in a village of women, of aunties. In the houses surrounding us lived people we knew and kids we called our friends. They were also the homes of the aunties. In addition to Mum, there was Auntie Esther and Auntie Judy. There were other aunties too, but their names escaped me. There were too many to remember as they came into and out of our lives. Some moved away and some passed away. All the women in our neighbourhood were our aunties, but only Auntie Judy was related, and only her kids were my cousins. Women governed our lives. They bought our clothes and food. They looked after the house and mowed the lawn. They commanded respect and designated our chores. They enriched us with their words of wisdom. "Stop your crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. If your brother told you to jump off the Sydney Harbour Bridge, would you do that too? Stop your bawling, you'll live." They were our sympathetic sages, our unquestionable authorities, who possessed a complex intelligence-gathering network which quickly detected and circulated information about any activity that we kids had pledged never to tell anyone about. There were men, too, but like my dad, they left before sunrise and didn't return until after dark. When Dad was home, he ruled the household, but for most of our childhood, the women ruled us. My dad was there on weekends and holidays. He came to our rooms, sometimes well after we had gone to bed, smelling of stale cigarette smoke and beer, to kiss us goodnight, ask us about our day, and make promises for the weekend. He was a kind and loving man. He was also hard, demanding, fearsome, and uncompromising. Like many other fathers, he was a mainstay in our growing up, but he wasn't Mum. She was never the wait until your father gets home type of girl. By the time Dad got home, the battle was over, the casualties counted, and the victor, Mum, reigned supreme. Dad was short, sharp, and it was all over. If you could dodge his wrath, you might escape. Mum had patience. She knew how to wait for our return. In my childhood, all adults ruled with authority and were therefore avoided as much as possible. All aunties could pick me up, put me in my place, lend me a hand, give me a piece of their mind, hold me tight, or smack my behind, along with their own kids. The aunties trusted each other with their children. Everyone kept watch on everyone else. Our neighbourhood was a place where family secrets were guarded, and gossip was king. Charity was an insult, but a helping hand was always offered. Money was loaned, but a debt had to be repaid promptly. The place where I grew up had separate family groups, separate houses, with separate stories joined by a common thread. Us, their children. It wasn't a privileged childhood, but we were safe, happy, fed, most of the time, and always a part of an extended community of friends, relatives, pseudo-relatives, and immediate family. We learned to be resilient, the benefits of sharing, and to look out for others. We were taught that our actions could affect the well-being of others, and that the consequences could be painful. We learned to go without, the value of food, and that all homegrown vegetables were never to be nicked, but always shared. If something was old, too small, outdated, or no longer needed, it was given to someone else who might need it. My mother told me, "You weren't brought up. You were kicked in the backside and told to get up." That line only acknowledges the sharp edges that we experienced and neglects to mention the softness and security that we all experienced. What made me? Life. The times we spent together in our youth as we charged merrily along like the Titanic through the oceans of life. Over the years, we all hit a few icebergs, lost a few passengers, and bear the scars and scrapes. The adults who guarded and protected us as we grew. The family gatherings, neighbourhood parties, staying at my cousin's house, the pre-dawn mornings out on the river fishing with Dad, the firm grip of calloused hands that pulled the wayward fishhook through my finger, cut the barb and removed the shank before telling me, "Here, stick it in your gob. Suck on it and stop your whinging." They were tough times, but they were happy times. There were fears, uncertainties, and ambitions that influenced me, but most of all, it was the kindness of the people I met and the times we spent together. Through their compassion, care, and random acts of kindness, they created me. The end.